All right, let's just get into it. I'm gonna go over basic attack macro today. If you guys don't know me, my name is Hori, Governor of Boogaflu, and yeah, I figured this would probably help some of you guys out with your attacks and just an overall understanding of how to play War in New World. So we're gonna go over it. It should be pretty quick. I like to keep things quick and concise. And again, this is just a general overview. So any more in-depth questions and stuff like that, you could hit me up. I'll probably do more videos in the future. But again, just a general attack overview so you guys can kind of lay down some foundation for what you're doing. Let's see here. All right, so a quick synopsis. We're going to go over an overview. Then we're going to talk about roster comp. We're going to talk about what a point team is, what quad groups are, what a kill squad and flank fights are, what openers are in war, what its splitting means, how you set up a fort, how you do fort entry, and then the basics of controlling points. So once again, just very quick overall. I'm not going to get into calling or, micro mechanics of groups and synergy and stuff like that. Just a quick overview. The objective of this presentation is to equip companies who are not aware of the standard war macro. So I'm aware that there are a lot of companies in the game that are full of players that want a war, but simply the leadership that's in charge has no idea how to do it. And the players that are playing the game just don't simply know what they're supposed to do. So we'll do that. We'll go over that. Hopefully you guys get a foundation and you can teach this to your company. In order for your company to play well, they must understand what their objective is, and it must be digestible. I can't stress this enough. The best players in the game, most of them have been doing the same thing a lot. So they understand what the objective is. Excuse me. And obviously, for someone that's new to it, if they get VOD reviewed, sometimes it's like information overload. So we're just going to do very digestible amount of information, something that's easy for the brain to understand so that you can try to apply it and think about war in a different way. Although it may seem like you can rewrite the meta, and this is huge for new companies, I'm telling you right now, and I'm just being completely honest, you're not going to rewrite the meta. You're not going to come out with a new roster that just beats everybody. It's just simply not going to happen. You might find a build that works well in a certain spot. You might find out that you can, make a group do this certain thing that helps you out a little bit with this one area. But again, the meta has already been set by the people that do this every day, multiple times a day. So I suggest, it's not to try and put any creative ideas down. What I suggest is that you understand what a meta is and you adapt to it. After that, once you have an adaptation of meta and once you understand multiple metas, then we start talking about trying to shift things around. But at first, let's just try to get a basic understanding down instead of just throwing whatever we can at the wall and seeing if it sticks. So this next slide, we're going to go over roster composition. This is a basic roster composition. This is a copy of my personal rostering sheet that I've used probably over 400 to 500 times. I've rostered many wars. Probably the most experienced shot caller in the game. Wouldn't say I'm the best, but I've definitely probably called more than any other shot caller in the game. So I have a good idea of what standard rosters look like. This is what I've ran in Boog. This is what I currently run in Boog. And this is very similar to what the top companies in the game run, as well as those companies in EU. Again, very similar, just basic roster comp. Here you can see that first 5 groups are up top. Last 5 groups are down below. They're labeled individually with what they're supposed to be doing. And they have just basic classes in there with some ultimates and some abilities. I use the sheet because it's easily customizable. It's something that my friend Oligarchy built a long time ago. It definitely helped my personal sheet out quite a bit. But in addition to this sheet, I also have like a history, and sometimes I go back in there and look at how the meta has shifted. But right now, currently, this is pretty close to the meta. There's going to be some kill squad players who argue, well, I don't think a bow belongs in group 8 or whatever it is, but the gist is there. And then we'll talk about some more specifics as we go through. But first of all, you've got an AoE healer. It's the first spot in group 1, and then every group has a healer. Most of those healers are running clap and DE right now, so just take note of that. There's a melee in group 1, a single melee in group 1, 2 melees in group 2, and then my 4 quad groups here have 2 melees. Almost all of those groups have a VGIG, and then you'll see in the 4 quad groups that they have an auxiliary label. That's because those are very customizable. In EU, they call it the 5th DPS spot, or I'm sorry, the extra DPS spot. In NA, they throw a bunch of weird stuff in there. You've seen like heavy fire staff BB be pretty popular in those groups. Also, an additional disruptor is pretty popular in those groups. But however you choose to do that, just make sure that it has some sort of meaning behind it and you can use it in a creative but effective way. And then down here, if you can see my mouse, hopefully you can see my mouse in the video, you've got 7, 8, 9, and 10, and these are your kill squad groups. Right now, the meta, and trust me, I've tried to change it. The meta is 6 main ball groups, 4 kill squad groups. That is the meta. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what people are doing. There is a disruptor or 2 disruptors in each one of these groups for the kill squad. And you'll see like I put Firestaff X because in EU, they're big fans of Firestaff Rapier. NA is recently coming on to Firestaff Great Axe. We've also seen Firestaff Pestilence. And then bow, obviously. Some companies are turning up the amount of bows because of how strong Boltcaster is. Excuse me. Yeah, so it really just comes down to this is what the standard is. I suggest that you try your own thing out. For the disruptor slots, I will say there's been some takes from EU that I agree with. And there's Greatsword SNS and there's Spear SNS. Those are the 2 common disruptor builds. I don't suggest trying to force people into builds that they're not comfortable with. If someone's more comfortable on Greatsword over Spear, I would say run a Greatsword over the Spear. The advantages and disadvantages exist, but I don't think it's worth having someone spec off of something that they're comfortable in. So the standard weapon for kill squad disruptors is SNS, but the offhand is usually Greatsword or Spear. In addition to that, we have a Flail VG in Group 2. I know I'm kind of bouncing back to the point team, but this Flail VG is huge. You'll see the shot caller spot in the bottom of Group 1. For me, I play VGIG. I'm not switching to Flail. I don't like Flail. It's not that I don't see value in it, but I personally find more value in VG. So I run VGIG, but usually this collar spot has a flail and some sort of offhand. And then there's another flail here with the VG as the offhand. Sometimes it's IG, it just depends. That's the basic roster comp. We'll go over some more specifics here. This is the point team, groups 1 and 2. And then I'll just go through each individual. There's 3 melees in this group. You see they all have detonate. I know I have that as choice. That's a mistake, but all 3 melees should be running detonate. And again, this is your football. It must be protected. Simply, you need the point team to be alive. The point team needs to live. In order for you to spin the point, you have to have a point team. So this point team will always stay on the point. Their toes should almost never be off the point unless you're completely resetting your army. And yeah, it's built so that they can be healed, they can do damage, and they can survive. That tank is huge for that, by the way. So the tank offers that extra damage mitigation for the rest of the people on the point. And this 10-man group right here will always be in 10-man comps. There is no 2 separate 5-mans. There's 10-man comms here, and myself as a shot caller, I sit in the comms with them so I can hear what they're saying and tell the rest of the army to do things based off of that, or I can communicate directly with my point team, and I can make sure that they hear me. With that being said, make sure that your point teams live, but also when we're talking about the comm situation, initiating clump fights for your army is huge. So one particular melee that I play with, I think he's arguably one of the best point team members in the game. His name is Vadim. Almost all my attacks since I've been back to the game have been with him, and it's really nice. We have a really good synergy going, but he likes me and him bounce off of each other, and he initiates a lot of clump fights, and he also lets me know when it's a good time to crash or when it's not a good time to crash. So again, the point team is what initiates clump fights. They're going to be the first ones there, or they're going to be the first ones getting crashed. So keep that in mind. Point team comms and shot caller comms require synergy. Again, talking about me and Vadim, I think every shot caller should have a preset synergy with their point team. Their point team should be pretty set, shouldn't move around too much, so they can establish that relationship. The point team must let the shot caller know when they are ready. The shot caller must give them the follow-up they require to kill. So if you guys have been in a recent war, you understand that like the superstar meta where like one person can kill a bunch of people, it's just gone. You need synergy, you need macro awareness, and you need cohesion with your army. So what I like to do is I just say, hey, point team, are you guys ready? Let me know when your deados are ready. I wait for the rest of the army to catch up a little bit, maybe 10-15 seconds, and then we send it. We pick a spot and we just completely send it. I'm going to show you a clip here in this next slide of that happening to give you guys an idea of what that should look like. Yeah, and let's get the audio right so it's not blowing your eardrums out.
All right, boys, spread. How long on Deados, point team? How long on Deados?
So here I'm asking. You can't hear it, but they're telling me they're ready.
Three,
and I see a clump, calling it.
Look, bottom right now, bottom right now.
The rest of the army comes in,
Good fucking wipes on bottom right, boys. Push
kills it,
push the top now.
and usually spreads out after that.
Wipes.
Pretty simple stuff. So again, just running that through muted. I'm asking. They're telling me they're ready. I'm looking bottom right. It looks juicy. I tell the army bottom right. I give them a countdown. And then all the rest of the army looks at it. And they start dumping on it. And as you can see, even still, some of these guys are getting out. So that amount of cohesion and that level of cooperation with the quad groups and the rest of the army is required for you to kill things effectively. How do I get out of this? Someone save me. I guess we'll watch it one more time. Cool. All right, so the next slide, we're going over quad groups. These are your standard ball groups, and as you can see down here, there's a picture of how they're going to be laid out. Standard ball is just main ball. That's the term that's used for it. Quad group's main objective is to zone until you follow up on the shot caller. So essentially, they're just zoning in their specific areas and charging their ultimates until it's time to crash. Top quads, and the way that I lay that out is 5 and 6 are my top quads. In downtime, if they're not zoning, if they can get value on touching healers on the outside of their quad, they should. And then bottom quad should be looking to, you know, take some of the pressure off of our healers and apply a little bit of damage to the enemy kill squads if they've made it back there. All detonates must be safe for shot call or clump calls. This is a big one. This is like a basic thing that a lot of melees don't understand right now. You don't deado solo. Solo deados are just a throw. Melee should be saving their deados for the shot caller. The shot caller should call them pretty often. Can't hold it for too long, but call it often when it's ready, and the melees will give it to you. Oh, and then real quick, going back, again, we have these auxiliary slots. It's just customizable slots according to what you think is good. I run fire stat BBs, I run disruptors. I switch it up all the time, so it's really just up to you guys. Kill squads and flank fights. Kill squad's main objective is to fight on the flanks. When flanks are won, you seek to translate that into pressuring healers. So this is getting value, is when you're translating, you know, winning the space into pressuring healers. That's value for your main ball. If the flanks are lost, you have to regroup and repush for the space. So if we're pushed all the way back, then obviously the enemy kill squad's getting value on our healers. That makes our main ball weaker, and then our main balls will start to die off. So it's good idea to regroup if your kill squad's pushed all the way back. Kill squads are necessary to win fights. You can't win fights if your healers are getting pillaged. Again, pretty simple. If your healers are dead, there's not sacreds, heals, or heals on point, and then your point team and your quad group start to slowly die off. So you want to keep your quads set up. You keep them set up by your kill squads keeping the outside space. Here's a little picture that a really good disruptor, Resp, drew up. It's kind of rudimentary and goofy, but he gets the point across. I have another video on kill squad macro. It's just, again, there's my own opinions in those videos, but it's still pretty standard. But 8 is the inner lane on Oppo, 9 is the middle lane, and then 10 is the outer lane, also known as the wide fight. 10's objective is to match the enemy wide fight, so they're going to kind of be expected to flare pretty far out. Group 7 is the bonfire group. It's usually a 5v5. If they win the 5v5, they look to get value. If they lose the 5v5, they back up, regroup, and then re-engage. And then again, this is the standard roster comp for those groups. 7 being on the left, 10 being on the right. And yeah, again, this is customizable. I say again a lot, don't I? This is very customizable. So you guys should be able to mess around with this a little bit, but standard. This is what's typically ran. All right, next let's go into openers. And also this is standard. You come out the B gate, you know, in a standard 50-50. You come out the B gate, you set up normal, and you engage the enemy. 50-50s can be good in a lot of ways. It's a good way for your army to get momentum if you expect to win the 50-50. If you hard win a 50-50, usually the defenders, it's like a gut punch to the defenders, so you can translate that into a quick C cap, which will take you to fort. You'll notice here that the A flag is free. Most companies in the game decide to hold 2 flags because rotating between 3 flags is a nightmare. So I usually send a solo capper over to the free flag. He gets the job done, and then we pressure B on a standard 50-50 this way. There are some companies that also run split openers. This is completely up to you on how you want to do a split opener. This is just an example where I send my bottom left quad, which is group 3, and then 9 and 10 out there, and then I have 7 and 8 covering my flanks on the B flag, and I still have 5 of my main ball groups here with still a solo capper. Some advantages of a split opener: it can throw the enemy off. Typically, they're ready to meet you on B with 50-50. There's a lot of creative ways to throw different looks at the enemy, so it's a good way to throw a different look at them. But the disadvantage of a split opener is that if you don't win on either front, you're going to have to full regroup, and if you have to full regroup, usually it means you're pushed back to war camp, so that's going to be pretty difficult. On both of these openers, I want to stress this: it's never a good idea to regroup in war camp. You always want to try and either get 1 flag right off the rip, which is the solo cap, or keep your ball out and then back it up a little bit. But you never want to get stuck in war camp because it's a choke point. If the enemy is war camping you, the war is going to be pretty much over. There's nothing you can really do about that. So try not to give like regroup and war camp calls. I would reset to default, back up a little bit, push to R road, just some of those ideas. All right, so splitting. Splitting is a very useful tool in war macro, especially if you're a fan of doing standard 50-50 opener. Splits almost always guarantee a B flag cap if they're not overwhelmingly outskilled or if you fuck up doing the split. Typical splits are a 15-35 split where you leave 15 behind on B, you send 35 to C. The objective here is to spin C flag up, that forces rotates, and then respawns simply go back to B. And usually the enemy is going to get caught in between rotates, and usually they will give the B flag. If they don't do that and they come back to B, there's a high chance that they set themselves back by getting wiped off that rotate. So typically this is a good way to get you down to a 1 point. And then the 1 point is very important. That's usually where a lot of companies win or lose the outside fight, is on this last point. But assuming that you win the last point fight, and you're doing a standard setup on the last point, by the way, you're grouping up and then you're pushing in. Assuming that you win that, this is a fort setup. You'll hear a lot of terms like waterfall. So assume that we're down here, we just cap the C flag, and then we're approaching this first gate. What I like to do, and what most armies like to do, is do a waterfall strat. So everybody takes down this gate, and then if you're assigned to this gate, you stay here. And then we move on. While we're moving on, we're taking all the horns down on the outer edges of the fort. And then once a gate is down on the sides, they take that inner horn down. But in this one, I would say, all right, boys, melees hit the gate, range hit the horns, 3, 8, and 10, you're staying behind. Once the gate goes down, I'll say, all right, 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, let's move to B. Once that gate goes down, I say, all right, point team, stay 5, 7, 9, move to the last gate. Usually I send my back gate groups off right off the bat. That's completely up to you guys how you want to do that. But the timing, if you send your back gates groups back there instantly, usually lines up with that last gate going down. You should have all gates down at the same time, and now you're ready for a push. Fort breaching, don't have a fancy picture for this because there is a lot of different things you could do with breaches, but here are the basics. All right, breaches can be custom. You can call audibles, moving groups around, but your main objective of the breach is to get in. It's not actually to kill. You shouldn't be fighting at the gates. I shouldn't see grab wells at gates. Shouldn't see ultimates used at gates unless that is your objective. Like if you do an overload on one side and you want to wipe that gate, completely up to you. But typically when a shot caller is like completely at default, so in these positions and everybody's ready, you will call a push. How you do the push order is up to you. You can say all gates push, you can say side gates push, you can say back gates push in first, side gates push in, claps on B. However you want to do it is up to you, but usually I'll just say, all right, all gates push. And then they push in, and then you start getting set up. Controlling the point. Sorry for the bad color there on the text, but controlling the point looks something like this. I know it's a little bit confuzzled, but this is basically how you control the point. You have your quad groups set up. I would set these quad groups up exactly how you set them up outside so that players are playing in familiar places. But 7 and 8, their job is to control dirt, backstage, those types of areas. And 9 and 10, their job is typically to control up top. 7, 8, 9, and 10 should be looking for healer kills pretty much the entire time. Your quad should be zoning until it's time to crash. And 1 and 2 should be standing on point, trying to spin the point up. This is dependent on respawn timers, so how you crash here is very particular. This is how shot callers are made to win and made to lose. You really want to put the respawn timers here again because you have to run a distance as an attacker that the defense does not have to run. So respawn times are very important for fort calls. That's why everybody gets a respawn caller so that the shot caller can base their decisions off of that. An example of that would be if respawns are coming up in 5 and I have numbers advantage, I might look to wipe a lot of people on respawn. So I might crash right on the respawn to maximize the time that those players are out of the game. Again, completely up to you on the timings, but just make sure that you're calling it with intent and that you're making sense out of what you're doing. And that's pretty much it. I'll go over the synopsis again so that you guys can go through and get an idea of what we talked about. We talked about roster comp. We talked about the point team. We talked about quad groups. We talked about kill squads, openers, splitting, fort setup, fort entry, and controlling the point inside the fort. Again, this is very basics. If you guys have more in-depth questions, I suggest that you reach out to companies that have already found success or that have been successful for a long time. Usually the governors are pretty busy, so they might just not be open to giving you information. It's completely their prerogative. But if you guys hit me up on Discord, my name is Hori Minoshi. You can DM me on Instagram or whatever it is. If you have questions, I'm cool with whatever. I'm just looking to get more competitive companies in the game so that the game is more fun for all of us. That's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.